Today, I'm talking with a fellow that lives in my town, Petaluma, California. Ramin Rahimian has created an app that's changing the way we find books. Today, many of us would download an ebook or buy a physical book from Amazon. All good options for different reasons. But when I saw what Ramin was doing, he's helping us to connect to our neighbors and communities directly to buy books. But, and that's a big but, I can see it can be more than buying books. It's reconnecting a community in a new way. This is My Big Story, and I'm Christopher Swan. Think about it. You're meeting a new local person, not a faceless person behind some username from eBay. And when we meet people, that's when amazing things can happen. I mean, for example, just look at what I'm doing on this show. So I'm fascinated why a man, just this one guy, is taking on the big book retailers with this idea. Also, Ramin is an award-winning photographer with his visual storytelling that's appeared in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and many others. He's more than an entrepreneur. There's something deeper, I think, that runs with him. So this makes me wonder even more, how and why does a photographer invent an app that's shifting how we can connect and locate the books we want? I know there's an interesting connection here. Here's a funny side note. Right before this interview today, I found out Ramin and I get our haircut from the same guy. Small world, right? Okay, I'm here at our meeting spot in downtown Petaluma. That's why you've been hearing me walking. So let's go get to know Ramin. Ramin, so good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Likewise. Let's talk about the app specifically.
Sure.
Tell me the name and then tell me exactly how it works.
Sure. The app is called Bookal, which is a combination of the word book and local. And the essence of the app is that it's a community marketplace for books. There's also a social aspect of it. So every kind of social feature that you're used to with apps these days, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we try to incorporate those. But the main part of the app is that we allow users to have access to books within their own community. So be it on the bookshelf of your neighbor or be it on the bookshelf of your independent bookstore, in a very mobile-friendly fashion.
Oh, I didn't realize the independent bookstore was an element of that.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So
why is that important, this local element versus what Amazon does or somebody else?
Sure. It's important because we as a society, Americans specifically, I feel that we're moving away from our own communities. But at the same time, there's been a push the last couple of years, last decade or so, to try to embrace our communities more. With Amazon specifically, having a book delivered to your door is very convenient. Mm-hmm. But that delivery of that book to your door within 2 or 3 days of you ordering it makes it that you are missing out on a lot of opportunities in your own backyard. You're missing out on the opportunity of getting in your car or getting on your bike or walking downtown to your own bookstore, finding the book you're looking for, having an interaction with the bookseller, meeting someone there that you know, going to the coffee shop after you buy the book. All these things mean something. And if we're taking that out of, any kind of like economic transaction for the sake of convenience, I think we miss out on something as a society and as individuals. So I think that's important. It's important to connect people to their independent bookstores because often they're the hubs of the community. They're the hub.
Yeah, I read something recently or saw something that talked about there's a resurgence of independent, smaller bookstores now, which is interesting, now that all these bookstores fell apart. But there's kind of coming back. Do you think there's a connection to that community aspect, or is there something else that's also helping it breed?
No, I think that's exactly it. There's a societal pushback toward forces that have drawn us away from each other, and there's also pushback toward apps. And ironically, it's an app that I'm making, but a pushback toward things that are digital. So, ebooks are declining, audiobooks are declining.
That's what it was.
Sure,
I read the ebook piece was declining a little bit, and then it was something about the bookstores. And
yeah. I mean, these technologies came across and people embraced them, and not that they were a fad, but they were a strong trend. But there has been pushback, and people are saying, paper books served us well. Having a physical book in your hand and the means by which you receive that paper book and shared it afterward are important. And we want to go back to that. So what my goal with Bookal is to find a perfect middle spot. So don't abandon your digital addiction, though you should probably work on it. But
like the subtext.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, exactly. You should definitely work on it. Embrace your love of analog and your love of community and your love of paper books. And we will create an app for you that will help you discover your own community, basically. Help you get off the couch and go to your bookstore and find the book you want, or have your neighbor, after you buy the book from them, who live within 5 miles of you, deliver that book to you. Even the act of, open the door real fast and grabbing it from them and seeing someone's face who's in your community and saying hi is more meaningful than having, the FedEx guy drop it off.
I don't know if that FedEx guy knows me well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, tell me how'd you come up with the idea for the app?
Yes, the idea came up with that my wife has been in multiple book clubs, and in 2015, she was still in one, and she kept on getting books from Amazon every month at her doorstep. And I started getting fairly upset with her and frustrated and saying, what's going on? We have Copperfield's, which is Petaluma's amazing independent bookstore. Why don't you just go get the book there? Or why don't you go to the library? And for her, it was that she just listed off reasons that anyone else would, who's addicted to Amazon, is, it's convenient. The prices are fair. I get it quickly, which makes sense. But at the same time, I know that with a little bit more effort, she could avoid depending on Amazon and actually engage with her community. So I came up with an idea of having a mobile-friendly way of people basically just searching for whatever book they want and having the app spit out every means in which that person can get the book locally. So that's where the idea came from. So I did some research. Yeah.
Well, can I pause you there? Yeah. Did you also just think, was it just at this moment when you're like looking at your wife, a little frustrated, and like, I'm going to solve a problem for everybody? Was it like this bigger, deeper, I would imagine you started with this idea and it started to like fester a little bit more. And you're like, hey, there's a possibility of doing something.
Well, that's a great question. It wasn't, that is the impetus for it, but there was a lot of buildup to that. So as a freelance photographer in the Bay Area, I do a lot of photo shoots at startups. So I'm very often in Palo Alto or San Francisco at startups of every size, from Google to, smaller player. And I just became very fascinated, and I always have been, about the inner workings of things that I don't understand, basically. So I'm interested in how movies are made. I'm interested in how these companies function, basically. Just being there had me interested in their ideas, how they treated their employees, the culture. I just started being very fascinated by that. So that got the whole idea of startups in my mind. And as that went along, I would always pitch crazy ideas to my wife about apps, many of which she just kind of shot down right away, to my to my great sadness. They were great ideas.
You're like, I'm still going to do them.
Yeah, and I very much respect her opinion on basically everything. And so it would hit me hard, when she would reject these ideas, but that's part of it. So I just kept on coming up with ideas. And then this whole incident happened with the books being delivered monthly. And I started iterating and thinking about the idea, and I pitched it to her basically, and she liked it. And that was a cue for me to pursue it.
Like you're actually onto something.
Yeah, I'm onto something. Yeah. So she gave me, the nod that it's okay. So that's where that came from. So I had Bookal as an idea, not so much the name of it, by like late 2015. In early 2016, my wife and I experienced a very painful life trauma incident, whatever you want to call it. that had to do with trying to get pregnant and having a baby. And so I'm going to get a little mumbly about it. But yeah, so it was very traumatic. We had to, we basically lost our child at 24 weeks. And we had to, actually give birth to him. It was very painful. It was very traumatic. The most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me. And with anything that's traumatic, there's people react to them differently. And, we were very hurt and just in a world of pain and just confused and angry. But out of that also came a sense of this is the worst thing that's going to happen to me in a long, long time, or possibly ever. And what am I afraid of? Like, what can I do that's going to hurt me more? It sounds very cliche, but I just said, like, okay, I'm going to run with things. I'm not going to be afraid to do things that I've been wanting to do. And one, it was probably a way to just cope with all the trauma at the moment.
Sure.
But the more lasting effect is that I'm not afraid. Like, I'm not afraid of the company failing. I'm not afraid of walking into a pitch meeting and trying to raise money. I've never done that before, really. But what's going to happen?
Like, was that the reality of, like,
Yeah.
what's the worst that could
What's
happen?
the worst that could
Like, I've
happen?
already been there.
Yeah,
Like, I've had sorrow.
Yeah,
Like, this
yeah.
is just a company.
Yeah, basically, I've felt the worst pain I've ever felt, and I can pinpoint exactly when that happened. And yeah, it was very revealing to me. So I'm just very, not sure if confidence is the right word, but just kind of, I don't know, what can hurt me now, and I don't want to have regrets. And I feel very confident in the idea, and I'm going to move forward.
That's a great motivator.
It's a great motivator, and I feel like people can go through events like that and choose not to embrace the positives that can come out of them. And dwell in the negative and actually have that incident eat away at them. Whereas I am fairly cognizant of the negative and the positive. So I will have moments where I stare off into space and think about what happened and kind of lose myself in that memory. And then I have moments where I look at my 2.5-month-old daughter and think about how amazing that is, and to have her, and think about the company, and think about the type of person I am now compared to before.
Yeah. Take it all in. So helps you define where you want to go.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone's asking you, like, what's the story of this company? Like, what is the origin of this company? I started thinking about, like, well, what is my story? What's the origin story of this company? And I started thinking about how I've not always been that person who did, like, a lemonade stand or that entrepreneur, story that everyone has about, like, I used to go sell candy bars at school. I never really had that, but I did have the part where I was always very interested in organizing my friends. My best friends, like, hey, let's get together. Let's go do this. I would be the ringleader, like trying to get everyone together. So I would do that all through middle school and high school. And then, after college, lived in Minneapolis for a bit, and I had photo friends there, photographer friends there, and I would organize gatherings with them. It was really important to me to get everyone together and be together. I moved to Utah for 4 years. Photographers there, my age, same thing. Let's get together, organize, just bring everyone together, circling the wagons and just having a community, basically. And it wasn't until I started thinking about why I started to do Bookal that I realized that, I've always been interested in community in that sense.
You just didn't have a word for it. Almost.
I didn't have a word for it, and I didn't have it. Yeah, I did not have a word for it. I just knew it felt right. And that was when I was my happiest, when I was surrounded by people and got to just interact and engage with people. And I had a lot of value, put a lot of value in that. I just never could articulate it.
Well, tell me about this connection, or I'm going to try to make a connection.
Sure.
So you have this storytelling that you love to do, and that's really what you gravitated toward doing through these photos. And then does that carry over into Bookal in some way?
I believe it does. Yeah. I mean, when you go into someone's home to take their photo, or you go to their doorstep to hand them a book that they bought from you, the level of interaction and experience could be vastly different. But what you walk away from is some kind of connection with another person, and that's very important because what I've learned over the years, especially since the traumatic incident that my wife and I had that we talked about, is that the smallest things can make a difference. We've always been told that, and some people are very cynical about that, and I've been cynical about that in the past too. And I feel like I've become less cynical. So I really value interactions that I have as a photographer, and I think they're important to just meet people. And I think it's valuable to be engaged with your neighbors and your community, and those things have an effect. And it's undoubtable that they do, and I just think that people should embrace it.
So that's really like the end result for you. It's really about creating an effect between people.
Yes. Yeah. It's really important to me. I mean, I also walked away from this incident that my wife and I had with just talking to people a little bit differently. I've always been very open with people, but I was more engaged with people after this. Like I just asked more questions. I think I kept my eye contact for longer. I don't know. It just opened things up for me. I'm just more curious than I even was before.
Do you ever share that story or the things that have happened afterwards, like this, more engaged? Do you share that with other people?
I do actually. Yeah, I've actually shared it. I've been open with people in the middle of conversations I've had with people, like people I knew before this traumatic incident and after. And, I would in the middle of conversations, like, I'm sorry for rambling so much. Like, I just been really curious in people's stories or, and just talking a lot. And I've been very self-aware of how I've changed. And I've really embraced it. I really like it. Just being more open to ideas. I mean, I listen to 70 different podcasts. I spend most of my time doing that, and I explore every kind of issue there is out there. And it's just fascinating. I just have it all come in at me. And it's very enriching, and it's really fulfilling to me. And I wasn't really quite like that before. I was more picky about what I let come in to my mind.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
When I looked at a few of very specific photos of yours, you also did some editorial really around it. It was almost like truly photojournalism. And you were telling stories about individuals through a series of photos and maybe with some captions and editorial with it. I think it's interesting that I could see that you were trying to bring a story to life or maybe help us experience something. And now it sounds a little bit almost like you're on the other side of that.
Sure.
Like you want to be the receiver of these things from people also, and really to let more in so you can experience that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's definitely two sides of the same coin. When I was finding these stories to work on, for me, what attracted me was I was curious about things that were not well known or were on the margins of society, and that I myself was curious about, that I wanted to find out more about. I did a story on a young Iraqi man in his early 20s who moved to Salt Lake City after losing both of his legs and horribly maiming one of his arms, working as a translator for the U.S. Army in Iraq. And I followed him for months and months, and just through all the struggles he went through, with just dealing with red tape and the bureaucracy. And we became friends, and I became really close to him. Just being able to tell his story and trying to make people understand the pain he was going through, but also his strength, was just very valuable to me. I also realized that he was much stronger than I was. I would have broken down a long time before that. So yeah, I wanted to tell stories back then, And now I'm open to just letting it all pour in and seeing how it affects me. But they're so closely related, at the same time.
Well, I want to ask a kind of a question about your overall life. That's how I'm going to frame this. All these things that we just described, right? You still do photography, I imagine.
Yes.
And in fact, we talked about this freelance piece because I know you've done wedding photography. You've done a lot of different stuff. Commercial, like you talked about working with startups. You have 2 young daughters.
Yes.
You started this app that I know is a lot of work because if there are bugs or things that you're trying to fix, it's just you're all in, right, to get it done. You're also a husband. You're trying to focus on community. So how do you fit it all in? What does that look like for you?
It looks like multiple shifts in one day. I think a lot of parents talk about having multiple shifts. So, basically in the morning, most of the day you're taking care of the kids. Especially right now, I get help because my wife is home before she goes back to work. But you just divide your day up. You have the part where you're the father, and then you have the part where you're taking care of the house because you're cleaning up after the kids go to bed. And then you have a little bit of time to, edit some photos from maybe a photo shoot the day before. And then you have time to work on the app up to like 1:00 at night or midnight. And then you wake up at 6 and do it again. It's very exhausting.
Is it worth it?
It's definitely worth it. Yeah. It's because I've always been someone who's been very like kind of driven and detail oriented when it comes to stuff like that. So I'm very task oriented. So I know what I want to do and how to get it done and like manage my time well. So it feels right to me. But it is exhausting, but it's definitely rewarding because I'm doing all the things that I want to do.
Mm-hmm. What about the gray area? And I only ask this because you just talked about this, you're task oriented and I can see you with lists. I can see you checking things off and you how to get it done. What if you don't know how to get stuff done? Like with this app, that's a brand new world. And you talked about, you're not afraid to go to a pitch meeting, though you've never done one before.
Sure.
So how do you manage that?
I manage that so far by trying to educate myself as much as possible. So a very valuable resource for me, and you'll be happy to hear this, has been podcasts, like I mentioned before. Mm-hmm. So I've definitely delved into surrounding myself with multiple startup podcasts and just really soaking it all in, listening to people's stories, and realizing that the whole startup world is populated with uncertainty, people who don't know what they're doing, people who are playing it by ear.
Did that make it like more comfortable?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. No one really knows what they're doing. Which is fine. And that's how life is too. But just taking the veil away from, the Mark Zuckerbergs and, just kind of like these CEOs, they learned on.
I think that was one of the biggest things I've learned as I've been doing this for a while is, there isn't one answer.
Yeah.
And the people that say they have all the answers don't.
They don't.
Like it's okay not to have them, but it can be uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah, but it's great to be uncomfortable sometimes too. Like I had a moment, I think like 2 weeks ago where I was having issues with the app, and I told someone I work with on the app, I'm like, this is kind of like cool that like these road bumps are coming up. Like I'm kind of like relishing in it because like these challenges come up, you deal with it, you move forward, another thing's going to come up. Like it's actually fun. Like I think if there weren't any issues, like what are you learning? Like what are you really doing if you're not facing things that you have to deal with? You're not using your arsenal of, 35 years of living to like deal with these things. How are you growing? How are you using your mind basically? I mean, it's all connected to me. Like,
and does that happen too? Do you feel like you're pulling in like experiences or things like in new ways from what you've done in the last 15 years or even more to what you're trying to do with the app?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a very valuable thing that I have taken away from being a photographer is being able to deal with multiple types of people. So just meeting someone quickly, being able to realize that like, oh, they're not being rude. That's just how they are, or they're not, they're this way, they're that way, and just rolling with it and understanding that everyone's different. So I've taken that into saying, like, okay, if I pitch this to someone and they don't like it, okay, that's fine. Pitch it to someone else, or, do it this way, or change this up. Like, don't take everything so personally, and
Mhm.
understand that because I don't know what I'm doing, it's okay to switch it up, because other people don't know that. They don't know that you don't know what you're doing.
Oh my gosh, that's so
So,
true. Fake it till you feel it as
yeah,
well.
but
Like people just don't
but
know.
in a genuine way,
Oh, of
like, yeah,
course.
yeah,
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 yeah.
and not like, I'm actually out, I'm hustling and I'm trying to do as much as I can. And things that I don't know how to do, there's companies that will serve you for that. They specifically will do bookkeeping for you, for instance, or,
Mhm.
you can hire someone to do your accounting, or, and I think to try to take everything on would kind of bury me. But I think I'm at a point where I'm okay with just saying, like, I don't know how to do this, you know?
Yeah.
For me, it's the idea.
Has it always been that way since you started this, or was that lessons that you've learned over the last,
I
year or
think
two?
a little bit when I started, but more so lately. The more I've been listening to other people's stories, and like how you need to let go and know that you can't do this because it's going to hurt your company and the story of your company if you keep trying to do everything yourself. I'm fine with just, letting go of certain things and
Mhm.
having someone. So I've been learning over time how to be more open to getting help from other people, basically. Um,
Well, speaking of help, we talked a lot about community. How has your community, like, either supported you or been involved with the work that you've been doing with, like, Bookal or even photography?
sure. Yeah, the community here has been great in embracing this. I'm very fortunate to have a very close group of friends who are all parents of kids in the same age group as my daughter, and we hang out all the time. And they're just great, amazing people, and they've been super supportive of Bookal. They've always been asking me how it's going, how excited they are to scan their books in, and get on the app, and offering ways of helping. And the community at large here, in early marketing that I did for the app, were very receptive to it, and I just kind of validated the idea that I have, that this is the right place to launch it, and I want to keep it in Petaluma. So the community's been very supportive. Um, I've been very fortunate about that.
Well, I felt like a theme here today.
Yeah.
Community.
Yes,
Community is totally the
definitely.
theme.
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, I started reading recently a book called Bowling Alone by
Mm.
Richard Putnam, and I got really not too far into it, namely because my kids. But he starts out talking about, he's listing off all these um, um, nationwide, not nationwide, but different organizations, different communities across the country. Like the Lions Club, or the Grandmothers Who Sew Club, or this and that have gone away, that have been around for
Mm.
decades and decades. And he wrote this in like in the late 1990s. He's like, this organization's gone away. This one's gone away after 70 years, and it's so sad to just see all these things fade away. But when you think about it, the sign that all these organizations are going away, all these community groups, it's pretty sad, because these are the building blocks and the glue that basically held these communities together. And that's what I think we need again, is to just have people getting together for
It's
whatever cause.
it's almost like I just kind of it clicked for me. You're creating a new kind of building block for the same thing that we had in the past. So it's almost like the ingredients to make the recipe have all changed, but we still want to still make that same recipe.
Sure.
But now you got to find new ingredients. And so because we become so disparate with this technology, now you're going to find new ways to rebuild it.
Sure. It's just like, I'm not naive enough to say, like, throw your cell phone out and don't open up an app. Fine, open up an app, but use it
To really interact with
to
real
interact with
people
real
in
people,
real time.
and not in like a dating app type way where it's
Yeah.
ephemeral and just doesn't mean anything, but in a meaningful way. You can actually, the whole goal is to have an opportunity to be like, here's an event going on at your, bookstore. You should go check it out. You wouldn't have checked it out in the past because you wouldn't have known about it, or you've been interested in it, but now you can go.
Hmm.
Even if you go and turn around because whatever, you're not interested, you still went downtown. Like, these things matter. It
Hmm.
matters not to be sitting on your couch.
Well, I think that's a great way to end it. It matters that you're not sitting on your couch.
Yes.
This is awesome.
Thank you
for all that.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Two things really stood out for me here. First, losing your fear will set you free to try new things. And as Ramin says, we just have to choose the positives over the negatives and keep trying. And also, community really matters. It's so important to find ways to create a bridge to local connections. I love meeting new people all over the world, and social media and the internet has been great for that. But we shouldn't forget about the people all around us. That's actually why I stay aware of what's happening in my greater community. It's easy for me to find amazing people to meet all over the world, and I love traveling and meeting them. But the truth is, there are tons of special people just in a few miles around me. And as I keep creating my story and exploring my adventure, I want to make sure I do it with my community, because I can't be part of the community if I don't embrace it. I hope you're thinking about that as well, so embrace your community. Okay, so if you want to check out Bookal, go to getbookal.com or just download it from the Apple App Store. And you can learn more about Ramin at raminphoto.com. And lastly, there's a plug for my town that I'm just walking through. If you're nearby or you're thinking about visiting the Sonoma wine country, be sure to make a stop in Petaluma. If you do, give me a shout out. Okay, I'm back in the car now. That's why it's so quiet. It's time for me to head actually to the airport now because I'm off to get another big story. Okay, before we wrap up this episode, I have something new to share. I've started writing about my experiences and the things that I've learned along my big adventure. And I'm doing it with one goal in mind, to help you find ways to dream bigger and make those dreams happen. I'm calling this new section on my website, Insights for Dreamers and Doers. Head over to christopherswan.info and you'll find insights under the Awesome Resources section. I also included them in the weekly Be Inspired newsletter. So hey, if you sign up for that, you'll get the latest insights delivered straight to you. Okay, now back to the episode. If you want to see a snapshot from the interview with Ramin, as well as some moments from our adventure, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at @MeChristopher and on Facebook at @TheChristopherSwan. Check out mybigstory.show and you'll find more info about my time with Ramin, including easy ways to connect with him. And for all of you that love the show, I love a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps others find the show. It makes me feel really good. Also, sharing the show with a friend or online would be amazing too. So that's it for this adventure. We'll keep exploring together on the next episode. I'm Christopher Swan, and this is My Big Story.